Power on.
Earth, 2019. Dominant species, human. Galactic potential rating, 0. Cultural affiliation, combination of government and global businesses, corporatism, legacy institution. Species still conservative, superstitious, and religious. Ecologically illiterate, largely unaware of cosmological foundation of love. Level of technological dependence is disturbingly higher than the galactic standard. Species distracted and behavior controlled by technology companies. System error. Advanced concepts detected beyond normal human levels. New galactic potential rating, over 9,000. Transmission type, podcast. Host, the Man of Tomorrow. Brian Sovryn. Source, Sovryn Tech.
You have got the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, the man who's always wearing triple black, Dr. Brian Sovryn here for you for this week's Sovryn Tech. And you know, you're wondering, what took this episode so long? Well, here's the score. And I am still kind of dealing with it, but I don't want you to wait any longer. Okay, my voice went out this past weekend, and I was able to kind of record some bonus content. I mean, I was able to record it, yes. Just it wasn't with my usual woo flair, you know. I mean, and I'm just barely able to woo again as I'm recording this. But my voice went out, and hell. I mean, I talk about this, you know, lately. I mean, when you're living that rock and roll lifestyle, you know, you kind of, when you're yelling at concerts, you know, woo, you know, all that stuff. Well, your voice kind of goes. But anyway, you can find out more about all of that on the Hard and Fast podcast. Got some great episodes of that coming out on Zomia 1 only. And don't forget about Zomia 1. This is the entire network that, well, frankly, I run. Got some exciting shows still to come on board with that network, and a lot of shows that are, well, you hear them all the time. Gaming Grid, you know, Sovereign Trek, TIE Fighter Renegades. I mean, there's so many. It's so much fun. And of course, make sure you become a member of the Zomia 1 Underground at zomia1.com. That way you get access to thousands of hours of exclusive content. In fact, even like, holy shit, some of the movie reviews I've been doing lately, like with the entire Batman quadrilogy, they got re-released. Wow, what a time that was. And I want to put it to you here right out front that there is content that now I am only releasing on Zomia 1. I am not, or on the Zomia 1 Underground, where I was parallel releasing some stuff on Patreon. I'm trying to get everybody over, okay, to Zomia 1 with Podbean. And so there's some stuff that I'm releasing exclusively there. Just some so far, just to entice. But anyway, I know there's some people who I think they're on Patreon, and honestly, they might not even listen to the show in a while, and they're just sticking with Patreon, or it makes it most convenient for them or whatever. I mean, let me know anyway, let me know what you think on that. But I'm really trying to get everybody over to Zomia 1 for a lot of reasons, and they don't all have to do with, frankly, well, they don't have to all do with me. Anyway, boy, Ice Planet Zero here has really thawed out. It's been some gorgeous days. It was 84 degrees here in New Hampshire just the other day. Unbelievable. But it's enjoyable. You know, it's funny. I always considered myself more of a winter guy. You know, we got some great stories to get into, and we will. I've always considered myself more of a winter guy. You know what I mean? And part of that was because the rest of the world seems to just kind of go to sleep when the snow falls. And so that's when I felt like I could really, just kind of come out and play, because I don't give a shit if it's snowing or whatever. I mean, I have no fear of driving in 2 feet of snow or anything along those lines. I mean, I hop in the Batmobile and away I go. But really, really, and I've said this recently before too, I think maybe it's like on some Q&A content or something, really starting to appreciate the spring and summer. I mean, and it is, I'll tell you, there's nothing like New Hampshire in the spring and summer. It's fucking gorgeous out there. But regardless of that, so been able to enjoy some of that, get some time thinking, sitting down. It's an enjoyable thing. And I actually, when we get into our lead story, I have something to help you separate. And it's a conversation, not really a story. It was based around a conversation that I had with an acquaintance who actually, I think he ended up doing a whole story on it. But regardless, it was something we were talking about, and it's like, wow, yeah, and it just clicked. And it's a way of separating in a time where it's very difficult to separate your work life, from your personal life, or other aspects of your life, shall we say, from your personal life. It's something that I think can help out with that. So anyway, we'll get into that for our lead story. But before we get into that, we have, of course, the Foreplay, where we talk about all the little stories going on in the tech and science world today. We haven't talked a whole ton of, we have talked science because we talked about going to space, but really that's all been part of the, what's happening in tech, like with Amazon. In fact, last week's episode, Bezos and Space 3, got some great response from that. Some people saying an absolute Sovryn Tech classic. Thank you I always appreciate those reviews. Never hesitate to let me know how I'm doing, folks. Good or bad. I like the feedback. I welcome the feedback on how you feel about the show. So anyway, let's get into the Foreplay here. So certainly one of the big pieces of news to come out, it's little, but it's kind of big. Could have done a whole segment on it, frankly, but I don't want to give it necessarily that kind of time. One of the big news is, this is what I'm talking. When your voice goes, like everything's just gone. At least when you're a podcaster, and I've got a face for radio, so this is what I have to deal with. My voice is all I've got. But yeah, one of the big pieces of news, of course, to come out this week is on the 21st of May, Microsoft finally released the Windows 10 update to version 1903, which was originally 19.1H1 or whatever, or 19H1, which is the May 2019 update. I still love it that now they don't even bother with like all these fancy update names, like the Creators Update, the Fall Creators Update, and all. I don't know what exactly happened there. Maybe they just want to. These updates have been clusterfuck after clusterfuck. I haven't really run into issues with them. We're going to cover what happened, or what is new with the May 2019 update for Windows 10. But maybe these have all just been so much clusterfucks that Microsoft just wants okay, yeah, there it is, and everything just happens really slow. But anyway, we'll cover that in a minute. But the more interesting releases, in my opinion, to happen is actually another operating system, arguably my favorite, or certainly in my top 3 operating systems. It was updated to version 3.14. That's clever. But anyway, but 3.14, which is Tails. And this was on the same day, ironically. I thought this was amazing. The 2 major operating systems that I use on a daily basis both had major updates on the same day. I don't think this will ever happen again, but I was fascinated that it did. So anyway, Tails 3.14 is out. The main deal here is now they did update to Linux kernel 4.19.37, but also they put in mitigation for a lot of the MDS attacks that have been getting announced lately. Riddle, Fallout, and of course Zombie Load, which is a pretty terrifying one. Even though all 3 of those, we haven't covered them on Sovryn Tech. If you want to hear more about them, of course, I recommend you listen to what is my favorite podcast, that being Security Now with Steve Gibson. In fact, I need to reach out to him to ask if he'd be willing to let I know that he pretty much lets anything happen, but if he'd let the show be on Zomia 1, because I would totally repost the show on Zomia 1. With absolute fucking pleasure. Anyway, but if you want to hear more about that, he covered them pretty deeply, did a far better job than I would, especially with Zombie Load. I think that was in a recent, the past couple of episodes where they talked about that. And these MDS attacks, they're kind of situations there's some remote execution involved, but basically it's not the easiest thing in the world, to be used against you. So unless you you were really, really targeted for a really good reason, it's likely not something, or not, I mean, zombie load's a little different, but it's likely not something so much to worry about. Regardless, if you're using Tails, you probably are concerned that you're some kind of target. So for Tails to get out in front on this, because version 3.13 just came out a couple weeks ago, and usually they only do like monthly updates, or even longer. So for this to roll around that fast, I mean, good on Tails, and they recognize very much the importance of this. Also, they updated to Tor browser version 8.5. So if you use Tails, get updating. All you have to do is just boot into Tails, and once you're logged into whatever internet connection you're using, then it will automatically pop up, and go ahead and make that happen. Especially, well, I mean, I take Zombie Load and some of the, and Riddle, both of those fairly seriously. So, I was right on top of it. As soon as, what I do is, and this would have been a great way, if you were following me on Twitter, you would have found out that this episode that you're listening to now is going to come late because my voice is gone, because I, announced it there. But a great thing to do is to actually follow Tails on Twitter. And if you use the app maybe on your smartphone or whatever device, hell, you could do it on Windows 10 with the Windows 10 Progressive Web App, and just set where you can get notifications for tweets, and just set Tails to where you get notifications for whenever they tweet out. You could put it in a list too, like an important list, but that way instantly when there's an update, because I don't fucking hesitate to update whenever Tails has a new version out. Like I do it immediately. Whatever computer, if I'm putting it into one computer, or if I need to reboot a computer to log into it, I will do it. I'll drop everything to make that happen. So I suggest the same. Now, speaking of Tor browser 8.5, quite the, that also has bearing on Android, which Tor browser, the alpha of that came out last year. And they said basically that early 2019, this would finally come out of alpha. Tor browser is, so originally when on Android, when you were, and this is all great because I get to update this in the next edition of the Dark Android book, which there is going to be a next edition. Don't worry. People know about, my life's been a little bit of a roller coaster lately, so some projects have to go on hold. But things are hitting equilibrium now to where that's not a concern. But anyway, the Tor browser was a project by Tor, because previously on Android, you had to install two separate apps from the Guardian Project. And look, the Guardian Project was doing great work. It's not like there was a problem. Okay, but Guardian Project was, they created Orbot, which is handy because it allows lots of different apps to work, to be, tunneled through Tor. On your Android device. Tor browser isn't going to allow, as far as I can tell, doesn't allow for that. But anyway, so there was Orbot, and then you had Orfox, which was basically just like an altered, which is exactly what the Tor browser is when you download that bundle. It was an altered version of Firefox that would work in conjunction with Orbot perfectly. Now, that was done by the Guardian Project. Now, what the Tor project actually did is they finally said, okay, no, we're going to come out with an official version of the Tor browser bundle for Android. And that's exactly what they did. And it's been in alpha for about a year. But now, as of Tor browser version 8.5, it is out of alpha and beta, and it is a full-on stable release. It's based on version Firefox 60, so especially on Android, there's no real learning curve. It's going to, if you've used Firefox on Android, it looks just like that. But kudos, there's not like huge feature updates involved here, but very simply, what the Tor browser for Android lets you do is, without having to power up, Orbot or anything like that, it just instantly runs the browser through and starts tunneling it through Tor. So it's one click. There's a lack of friction as far as using Tor now on Android. And in this case, a lack of friction, I think, is a good thing. As we stated many times on this show, a lot of the creative, or not creative, the business, well, what do you want to say? The philosophical direction. How about that? The philosophical direction that the Tor project has been going in over the past few months is basically they want everybody using Tor. Everybody. It's not just for activists. And they want you using it actually all the time. Making it a little more frictionless on mobile devices is a winner. I mean, that's the way to do it. So kudos. That is a full stable release. If you were concerned about using the alpha or beta and it leaking on you, etc., I completely understand. But now you do have a stable release. But yeah, so check it out. Link is in the show notes if you want to find that. But of course, you can find it in the Google Play Store and perhaps elsewhere. So, okay, let's move on to, well, why don't we go ahead? Let's start getting into Windows 10 while we're talking about operating systems here and various updates. Actually, you know what, quick. So Firefox, like we were just saying, that now the Tor browser for Android is based off of version 60, and well, Tor in general is based off of version 60 of Firefox. I think today Firefox actually updated to version 67, which is supposed to be, this version of Firefox is supposed to have trimmed out a lot of different features, and it's supposed to put like tabs on standby and a lot of these other things. Basically, and this is hard. It's so hard to say which of these numbers are real. You really have to put them to the test. But basically, that Firefox can, with some pages, be effectively 80% faster now. This is supposed to be the fastest version of Firefox yet. Of course, we hear that all the time. And I'm not knocking Mozilla, saying that they're lying or anything like that. I'm just saying that kind of verbiage, fuck. I hope it gets faster all the time. Like, that's what software really only ever needs to do two things: become faster and more secure. That's all you need software to do. Faster, more secure. As far as more secure, that entails a lot of other things, in my opinion. Okay, but faster, more secure. So every fucking release should be faster, right? But I guess this is such a significant increase. The idea of peeling back a lot of different features, or giving people the option to get rid of a lot of features more on Firefox, is a great thing. I know that's a part of version 67. If you're a Firefox user, and I hope you are, feel free to check that out. Now, again, before we get into Windows 10, one other bit of interesting news, and this is from just a few days ago, but apparently, all right, look, folks, I'm an anarchist, fuck government, okay? But sometimes, you can use them as a weather gauge, shall we say, in the tech world. And South Korea, might as well just call it Samsung. But I think Samsung, speaking of 80%, I think Samsung's like 80% of the South Korean economy. I'm not kidding. People don't realize how much Samsung actually, how much they do, how much they build. It's pretty incredible. But not uninterestingly, and keep that Samsung fact in mind, South Korea the government has decided to ditch using, for their government computers, Windows, of all things. They are, and what do you think they're going to switch to? What, are they going to buy a bunch of Macs? No, of course not. Like I said, Samsung country, baby. But they are switching to Linux. And there's a lot to say around this whole process. As I understand, it's going to cost them about $500 million. Billion, okay? $500 million to do this. Because there's a lot of new hardware that's going to get purchased as far as this goes, all that. However, so they recognize it's going to cost a lot in the short term, but in the long term, they feel like they're going to save a lot of money, and also they are going to fall out of the, well, shall we say, because, the reason they're doing it now is because Windows 7 support is coming to an end. That's a debatable fact of whether or not Windows 7 support's actually coming to an end. Because did you hear? I had this lined up in the Foreplay, but we can just mention it now. There is another security update put out for Windows XP. That's fucking mind-boggling. That there's still an update for Windows XP. Now, granted, there was actually a version of Windows XP, which look, that was 17 years ago. When Windows XP first came out. This is it's longer than that. Anyway, XP originally, for the full version of Windows XP, the end support date for that was originally April 2014, something like that. Now, the last edition of Windows XP, which is one of those POS ready versions. It's like Windows Embedded, right, for 2009, something like that, which is technically still XP. That just ended support. And that was kind of like the latest version of XP that still had some kind of support. That just ended this year in April. Okay, but all versions of XP, embedded, otherwise, as far as I understand it, all got, and of course, the full versions, all got a security patch. Still, that's crazy. So, I mean, like, to say that Windows 7, it's falling out of support soon, so we better switch over to Linux. I mean, look, switching over to Linux, for the South Korean government to do that, again, fuck government, but it's like the right move, because it is software-wise, it's cheaper, update-wise, obviously it's cheaper. To say nothing of the fact and the most important fact is that it's going to be infinitely more secure for them. I mean, it just makes all the sense in the world and far more easier to scale. I mean, there's all kinds of great reasons for that. So, I mean, just getting out of that system which is, as we've said earlier, a clusterfuck from Microsoft for Windows 10. Yeah, I don't blame them, and if information is in general more secure, hey, great, and if there's more systems using Linux and there's more infrastructure around the planet that is using Linux instead of, reliant upon Windows, even though Windows 7 was, for what it was, a great operating system, dynamite, I'm not going to applaud them because it's government, but you get my point. And I think it's pointing in the direction of where what we've been saying for, is even recently for a little while, but we've been saying for years on this show, eventually it's going to get to the point where, security is going to become so paramount, people just won't be able to really avoid it. And you're going to see, stuff that you would never imagine would switch away from Microsoft or, from Windows are going to, and you're going to be forced to, for either cost, security, or all other kinds of reasons, or at least just even having control of your computer. Though, ironically, so, I mean, I don't know, I can't imagine this happening, that suddenly, the South Korean government looks and sees, whoa, the May 2019 Windows 10 update is fucking amazing. It gives you so much more control. It's so much more secure because it's sandboxing, and it'll let you delete these apps. And blah, 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 blah. Okay, I can't imagine they're going to change their mind. But, we will talk a little bit about this, that it seems like Windows is going in a very interesting direction as well. But regardless, I think one of the bigger reasons, actually, that this is happening is because Samsung is really pushing hard. What is it? Samsung DeX, right? DeX, where you can use a Galaxy smartphone and, you can attach it in whatever way, Bluetooth, all the different ways, and with a dock, and where you can turn it into a computer. I imagine South Korea in general might be looking and going in that direction. And that is, DeX is Linux based. And so, to just have the system have a shared code base between each other, I think that's more of the reason. I think you cannot overstate the importance and influence of Samsung in that country. And I think there might be something a little more there as far as that goes, but that's speculation, and that might be another conversation. Regardless, the world is switching over to Linux. You might as well too. But if you are still using Windows 10, well, here's something to talk about. And that is the May 2019 update to Windows 10. Ironically, one of the big things people are talking about with this is the new light theme, which I think most people would find funny, because it's like, wait, didn't Windows always have a light theme? It's the dark theme that's new, because the opposite of a dark theme is light theme. So what the fuck? Well, true. And that's why it's funny, but it is a more streamlined, it's a third version, where it's meant to be, I guess, a little extra bright. But anyway, that's a possibility. I don't know why everyone and their mother isn't using a dark theme. I mean, if you see how easy, it's so much easier on the eyes to navigate Windows Explorer and everything now that we finally have, you don't have to set your computer to high contrast #2 anymore. And, you can finally go through. And I mean, one of the things I like to do is if it's late at night, okay, and I have some, I'm somewhat, maybe I'm not mentally all together, just getting back from the gym and just worn out or whatever. Sometimes I like to do some, file management work, and I have plenty of that to do at all times, because I'm a veritable librarian as far as many things go. And boy, to have that dark theme in that fucking Windows Explorer, man, I can't imagine why people, would want to rock a light theme these days, but whatever, I guess people do that. I also see people, messing around with their computers at full brightness all day long, where I would cut it back by at least 30% at any given moment. I mean, what are you doing to your eyes? But that's besides the point. So A lot of people talking about that. Whatever, doesn't mean much. The new Windows Sandbox security feature in the May 2019 update is interesting, where basically a lot of the apps, apps that you use within Windows 10 in general are getting what you could describe as an isolated desktop environment where it's not going to affect the rest of the operating system. This is a very nice security feature. It's something that they've been slowly implementing in enterprise versions and even into full-on apps already over the years. But this is a much bigger implementation of it. So I think that's pretty slick. My opinion, here's for me, the big two. There's also, they made a much cleaner start menu. But here's the thing, you can only get like this cleaner start menu if you buy a new Windows 10 computer, or if it's a new installation of Windows 10, or if you create a new Microsoft account. And I mean, it's hilarious because it doesn't look like the classic start menu at all from, every version previous or from Windows 7 back, but it doesn't look like the Windows 10 start menu really. So I think that's kind of interesting that they're backpedaling once again. I don't know what I'm going to talk about what they might be thinking here in a minute. But these next two are the two biggest features of the May 2019 update, in my opinion. None of this stuff is earth-shattering, but this is interesting. And that is, you can now uninstall a shit ton more of the Windows 10 apps. UWP is dying, but of these apps that come pre-installed with Windows 10, including Microsoft apps. Now you can actually uninstall Groove Music. Boy, we already said that was dead for so long. You can uninstall the Mail app, which I think is great because it's annoying as fuck when it tries to open that. And that will also delete the Calendar app, though. Keep that in mind. But you can delete both of those. You can delete the Movies and TV app. I don't even know anybody that uses that. I don't even think I've opened it. I don't give a shit. You can uninstall Calculator. I don't know who would do that. Why not? Leave it there. But whatever. The Paint 3D app and the 3D Viewer, you can uninstall those. I think there's a few more that you're able to completely uninstall now and really clean up Windows. I mean, and that's, in my opinion, that's great. Make it a dumb operating system. Stop trying to get people to default over to things. I've noticed, so I did update, I have my Lenovo ThinkPad, my 11E, third generation, that I use. It's very much my workhorse, my daily driver. I mean, you'd think, oh shit, it only has a Core i3 in it. This does the job, okay? And it's nice to be able to just dual boot and rock into Windows fast when there's certain things that you want to do in Windows. I did the update on this, and I was surprised by, there's a lot of little things little features, like right now. So I'm recording this using the May 2019 update. Of course, I'm using Audacity for recording this podcast. But now there's a new little icon in the taskbar, and it's a little microphone, and it tells you what app is using your microphone. That's kind of nice, to get that notification that something is accessing your microphone. And it's doing it not from a UWP app, not from Microsoft Edge or anything like that. It's doing that from a very, a classic, an old, frankly, Win32 open source app, that being Audacity. And so that's great if that's kind of system wide, that it knows that, where your microphone is being accessed from. I like that a lot. I like that little feature. Now, grant you, the nice thing with a ThinkPad, particularly with the 11E that I have, is there are hotkeys to kill the microphone and, all kinds of different things. The nice thing with this, though, is that the hotkeys, there's a nice orange little LED that'll light up when you know that this stuff is off. Granted, it's still technically a soft switch, which that has its concerns, because what, are you going to rely upon this little microphone icon in the taskbar to know whether or not your microphone's on? The NSA could still be listening to you. Sure. Okay. But at the same time, this is kind of nice. I was kind of surprised to see that, because I didn't read that in any of the feature lists, but there it is. I imagine there's one for the webcam as well, but I haven't had time to test this yet. I've only been using this since it was released, so that's only been a couple days. I want to get to those two other features. I have not run into any issues whatsoever. Everything works just as it worked 3 days ago on my Windows install. But me personally, I've never really run into any of the issues not like technical issues. I've not liked some of their upgrade path, like what they've, new features and things like this. But I've never run into, with any of my computers, I've never run into the issues that other people have. Like with the October 2018 update where people were getting their documents deleted. I installed that day one and I didn't run into any of these issues. So yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some with this, but anyway, some of these features are pretty slick, and a lot of it is decoupling all these Microsoft, these default apps that you have and decoupling them away from the operating system. And I think that that's wonderful, including this. That uninstalling more apps was one of them. The second great feature here is that now you can basically stop using Cortana. The search feature within Windows 10 has now been separated from Cortana, as to where before they were one and the same. Now they have been separated. I can only applaud that because, I tried using Cortana. Cortana got interesting when you had a lot of these default apps that now you can completely uninstall. And if you're really into the Microsoft ecosystem, but then they killed off Groove music functionalities and everything else with Cortana, and then it just became pointless. So now finally removing it from search, and I don't even see the Cortana icon in my taskbar anymore, and there's just a little search button. Win, as far as if you're a Windows 10 user, and I understand why some people are, and but of course, let's all move over to Linux. But it's funny that there's all of this decoupling away from Microsoft services, and it almost, I wonder, okay, especially with the full inclusion of the Linux kernel into Windows 10, a part of me really wonders, because with a lot of this stuff getting away from Microsoft proprietary technology, like Microsoft Store apps becoming PWAs and progressive web apps instead of UWP apps, some of the sandboxing, which basically runs it in a little virtualizer. Basically, Microsoft Edge going to Chrome, or going to the Chromium engine. A lot of these other things. A part of me wonders, and I theorized this and predicted this a long time ago, that A, Windows would eventually go completely open source, but B, maybe more interestingly, Microsoft will, and Microsoft already has its own version of Linux that it licenses out, but that Windows might become Linux, in and of itself. And that's why they're switching out, getting away from, again, a lot of this proprietary stuff, even proprietary stuff as simple as their mail app. And that there could be this complete underlying shift going on. You already have the kernel baked in. You already have all this ability. You're adding in more and more features to get people that know how to use Linux to be able to jump on it. You can run Ubuntu and everything within it. I wonder if that's something coming down the line, because they know that Windows isn't their bread and butter anymore. It's something to think about. The fact that they're letting you get rid of apps and everything. Basically, they're saying, yeah, if you're going to be with Microsoft, you're basically going to be using Office, and then where's Office going to go from there? Let's be clear here. So the like Microsoft Edge, the preview for Mac OS came out this week. You have Microsoft Defender, not Windows Defender anymore. It's Microsoft Defender, and we know that that's coming out for Mac OS, and of course it's already built into Windows 10. But then also, they're talking about releasing that for Linux, which Microsoft Defender is it's more than just antivirus. It's a lot of things. But regardless, I'm starting to wonder if there might be a world where Windows is just a distribution of Linux. I wonder. I'm just saying. There's a lot of decoupling. There's a lot of killing of features in this, not necessarily adding, and that is fascinating. There's some other stuff in here. I'm pleased to see that they have added in a lot of features for Windows MR, for Windows mixed reality headsets. All those VR features. I'm glad they're not backpedaling on that. I'm glad they're continuing to go forward with that, because I think that's a direction that much of computing is going. Okay, like it or not, it's a direction that things are going. So that's a nice feature too. But anyway, there's your Windows 10, kind of the major feature roundup as far as all of that goes. But yeah, this points at some interesting directions, in my opinion, for what Windows might become, and where Microsoft in general is going. Because again, they make all of their money now and they're doing billions. Like, I mean, their stock's never been higher. Okay. You could say people are stopping to use Windows or whatever, or, you know, their phone business failed or blah, 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 blah. But it's a more valuable company than it's ever been, and they're doing great money with Office alone, Office 365. And if that's all they really need, there's no reason not to make it completely platform agnostic, which they basically have already, everything except for, you know, your everyday Linux distro. And, well, that could end up still happening. I mean, I never thought that would happen, but fuck, maybe. Now, let's get into our story of the week. And it's not really, to call it a story is not true. And I've done this many times in the past. This is really a topic. This is something I want to bring up to you to consider. And look, you know, while I think it's a great idea, okay, there's quite a few minimalisms. There's minimalisms I don't believe in, and then there's minimalisms that I wholeheartedly believe in, and some of which I've even in certain ways invented. That being, like, for example, software minimalism is a great thing. Use only the software that you need, or, you know, install as little software as possible is basically the idea, because each new piece of software is really a potential exploit or gateway to your digital life, and your digital life is very little different from your physical life these days. And adjacent to that is, or running parallel with that, would be account minimalism, which means have as few accounts online and, well, maybe elsewhere as you can have. Because, again, every other account is potentially another exploit, right? Or open for another data leak. And with data leaks, you know, it's not if, it's when. So that's why you want to engage in account minimalism. Then there's also hardware minimalism, which will kind of speak to what I'm about to talk about. And hardware minimalism is meaning having as few devices really as possible. That's the less you have to worry about making sure that they're updated, and the less that you have to keep secure. That said, while I personally like hardware minimalism, I find myself still having a few devices. You know, I have my smartphone. I mean, I have like a bunch of like old smartphones too. Those I keep totally clean, and, you know, I mean, I don't install really anything on them unless I need them for a purpose, like for if I'm, you know, writing a security blog or something like that, then I'll use it for screenshotting and things like this. But then it's right back to resetting it as soon as I'm done. Sure, I have those, but basically, as far as what I use, what's ready for me and might have some information about me or something like that, I have a smartphone. I have a couple computers, a few, I guess, and this is the way to put that, which a lot of them are for testing purposes, and so they don't all necessarily have account information on them. But, you know, I have a laptop. Let's break it down to this. I have a laptop. I have a smartphone. I have my 3DS. I have my Kindle Oasis. And I have I have a tablet. I still have my handy dandy Nexus 7 from 2013, which I still stand by the fact, or my position that I think that's like just the last great, and maybe first great, Android tablet ever made. It is the iPad of Android, the iPad 2, I should say, of Android. Because, like, remember, I mean, Apple's had this problem for a while where the iPad 2 just does fucking everything and nobody's bothered to upgrade from it because who needs to? It still fucking works. Well, the Nexus 7 still works for me. So those are my kind of like the devices that I have on hand at any given moment. Okay. Now, the problem is, like, the Kindle Oasis, that's great. Okay. For reading, that's great. And that's all that does. But it's not. While I have tried to shoehorn the ability to do email and other kind of communication, maybe some encrypted communication and things like this, you know, it's shoehorning and it's really not practical. Okay, for that. It's good for reading, and that's great. Like, I like a good single-purpose device. I am a big fan of that. The 3DS, kind of a similar situation. And when I say 3DS, yes, I mean the Nintendo new, actually, it's the new 2DS XL, but you get my point. Not really, you know, that's very single-purpose in itself, even though it has a web browser on it. And I mean, there's an interesting conversation to have around, you know, a lot of people don't realize this, but like the Nintendo DS its predecessor actually had its own communication scheme, and you could communicate. It was a great way to communicate locally. It was almost like walkie-talkies. And it didn't require any infrastructure. It just required other people having a DS, and you could communicate. That gets into interesting places, but we'll save that for another time. And I have my smartphone, and I have my laptop, and of course my tablet. Now let's talk about those three. So those are very much multi-function devices, okay? Meaning that they can do, not all of them can do anything. My laptop can fucking do anything, but they can basically, they're multi-purpose. They can do a lot of different stuff. Now a problem that I think a lot of us have today, and I can certainly speak to this, is that it's near impossible to separate, if you work from home, if you are a digital nomad, perhaps, if you are working from home, or, you work from wherever you put your laptop down at, right? And there's no insult. I am the same way. All right. I am one of those people. Okay. If that's how you work, if that's how you, engage with clients and do whatever work you happen to do. Okay. Let's say you're working in PR or something like that, whatever. I mean, me, as long as I have my laptop or even my phone and I have an internet connection, I can literally do my job from anywhere. Okay. I could run this podcast, frankly, from anywhere, but then that creates a problem. And that problem is that also I can never escape my work or, whatever. And not that I want to escape, Zomia 1 or, Sovryn Tech or anything like that. That's my baby. I mean, I love it. I live it. So, but like work overall, if you ever want to escape from it, you really can't. And you need to be available on your phone. So, you could say, well, I just keep it on my laptop. I mean, I know what some people do to separate, and I've done this in the past too, where on your laptop, and this is generally what I've done, you will have multiple web browsers because a lot of what we do happens within the web browser, right? And so I'll have an instance of Firefox that's for myself, and then I'll have some Chromium-based browser for, my workload, for, the work that I do. And again, not related to Zomia 1 or Sovryn Tech, for clients. And that way I can kind of keep it separated and I can close one out, but there's issues there. And part of the issues there is that if you're doing that from a laptop, look, the more web browsers you're running, you're killing your battery life. I mean, you're fucking destroying it. If not worse, you're destroying your fucking hard drive, because of all the tabs you have open and all this other stuff. Google has done an impressive job, I will say, fuck Google, but they've done an impressive job of allowing you to be logged into multiple Google accounts. And look, when you work for other companies, it's a pretty good bet that you're going to be using a G Suite account of some kind, especially if you're like in companies that allow for digital nomadry and so on. You can have multiple Gmail or Google accounts in one web browser, which is handy in the sense that, okay, you don't say, like, if you're using Chrome, you only have to install Chrome. You don't have to install anything else. I imagine with Microsoft Edge, if you're on Windows 10, you could do this as well, along with other, web browsers. That's possible. But basically, again, we were just talking about software minimalism. You don't want to install a ton of web browsers. Okay. You don't want to install a ton of software. And so if you only need one web browser that can handle multiple accounts, great. But then you have a bunch of tabs open for work, then you have a bunch of tabs open for maybe your hobby, and then you have a bunch of tabs open for personal, and there's no separation. And that becomes a very real problem. Like your work, shall we say your work attitude, your work mind, how about we call it your work mind, never turns off because it's always there waiting in those fucking tabs. And if you're on your smartphone, it's just a matter of time before, somebody contacts you on Slack or on Messenger or whatever the fuck it is that your way that, clients or whoever you're working for ends up getting in touch with you. And you just, to make it worse, with your smartphone, the connection's goddamn persistent and it just it won't leave you be. So an interesting solution, bit of a compromise. Again, I was talking with an acquaintance about this and I had kind of already come up with this. And he kind of built off of it a bit. But, years ago, actually, I've mentioned the Dark Android book. So I started what was called the Dark Android Project, where it was you creating a inexpensive, mobile-capable device that would allow you to engage in, let's just say, anonymous activity. Okay? And actually, the Nexus 7 was my pick. The 2013 Nexus 7 is part of the reason I have one. Was my pick for doing that. In fact, I did a workshop last year at PorcFest where everybody got a Nexus 7 tablet, and I showed them how to, engage in anonymous activity. And it went over very well. It was very popular. But my basic gist is that, okay, you have this tablet. When you are on this tablet, you are not, what's your name? And I didn't do like the rock. So it doesn't matter what your name is. I did do that. But I said, what's your name? No, that's not your name. When you're using that tablet, you're somebody else. You're the Green Ranger or the Pink Ranger or whatever, and that's the way you have to think when you're using that device, is you are a completely different person. And that's because to be able to engage in anonymous activity, you have to be first and foremost, and I think in your head, anonymous. Like you have to be thinking like you're not the person that otherwise you're going to do something that could effectively, don't take this the wrong way, finger you. Okay. So you want a different mindset when you're using that. And what I'd never thought about though, I never took that to, shall we say, less extremes, but just as important ones, where a tablet, because of its larger size, is really a hybrid where, okay, you can have kind of the ease of holding it and using it that comes with, a smartphone, okay, just on a little bit of a larger scale. But then also, it has the size where you can use a web browser within it, much like a desktop. And it's also very easy, of course, to, just attach a Bluetooth keyboard and a Bluetooth mouse to it. If you want to get some personal work done, like some writing or something like that within it. But the tablet can be, you don't have to log into with all those different Google accounts. Hell, if you want to put, like mine has Lineage OS on it, you don't have to log in with any accounts if you don't want to. And that can be your device that you use. And with Lineage OS, you don't even have to install Chrome, or you don't have to have Chrome sitting there. But that would allow you to have this completely separate device that you can use for you, not your work, maybe not even your hobbies, or, like your hobbies or like your side piece, your side job, your side hustle. Not even for that, but just for you, where it's you and a computing environment, if you go that far, or it's just the content that you want to consume, whatever. I love using my Nexus 7 to read comic books. I do that all the time. It's a great way to read magazines, okay? And you don't have to be like wholly anti-Google with it if you don't want to. Like you could put Google News on it. It's a great way to consume a lot of news going on and everything. You can put just about anything on there. You could still even do a lot of, like you could put, if you want to put banking apps and things like this on there to be able to keep track of that, keep it as part of your personal life, right? You can do that. It's a simple thing that I'm telling you, I realize, but I feel like it was, especially when I got done talking to this guy about it, I was like, boom, like my mind just exploded, because I have this issue too, where when work, even if you're doing the separate browser thing, that icon or whatever in the start menu, whatever it is, it's always there waiting for you. I think part of the reason I find myself spending so much time in Tails is because it kills a ton of these distractions, and it's a very clean environment to work in. But then also you're somewhat limited in what you can do in Tails, somewhat, when it comes to, maybe, just fun things you want to do. So that doesn't exactly work, but part of the reason I think I find myself in that so much is that I'm not getting the workload isn't hitting me, isn't pushing back at me or whatever, right? So, aside from you booting into an entirely different operating system, I think one of the easiest things to do, and especially, like I was saying earlier, when it's so gorgeous outside, okay, that's the beauty of having a really pocketable, mobile device. And a Nexus 7 is just a 7-inch tablet, not very large at all. I imagine if you're more of an Apple person, actually, there's an argument to be made for the Apple side of this, where especially if you were, and I'm not telling you to go buy an iPad. I am absolutely not telling you to do that. Okay. But if say you are used to, because this can actually go both ways. It's not an argument for Apple. Let's say you're used to using an Android smartphone. If you bought an iPad to be your separate private life device, that really forces you to think completely differently, because you're looking at such an alien operating system in many ways. A lot more bubbly, right? But on the flip side, if you're somebody that uses an iPhone, maybe getting an Android tablet, which are a little harder to find, or at least ones that are worthwhile. I mean, people still make new ones. Samsung still makes new ones, but anyway, if you're used to using an iPhone and use an Android device, that will get you out of that mindset. That'll get you out of, okay, this is something different. And it's really like it becomes your OS for your personal life, for your private, not even just personal, your private life. Okay. Where you do things and it's the things you want to do. I think it's really important. And again, it might seem simple to you, but I don't know. It struck me as a moment of brilliance to have a separate device that is just that. It is for your private life and your private life alone. You don't log in with anything fucking else. Nothing else as far as that goes. As far as if you still want to be able to communicate with it, granted, like installing Signal onto a tablet can be a little bit of a pain in the ass. It's possible. But then also you can only have one instance of Signal open in any given moment on whatever environment you happen to have. I suppose if you wanted to, you could just have a separate, like a smaller laptop or something like that. I guess that's a possibility too. Even if you're a Windows 10 person, like the Surface Go or something like that. That's something as well. But I think it's a little too tempting, like with a laptop, to want to do so much more. Okay, than just like engage your personal or your private life with whatever, internet connectivity and computing power that you happen to need. I like the fact that a tablet still kind of limits you in that way. So again, having that completely separate device, I think is very, very handy. It gets you into that mindset. It differs for everyone, what you want to do like with your private life, but I think it's a great way, especially if you can help it, don't even really log in with a Google account, or put the DuckDuckGo browser or something on there and use that as your web browser and your search engine. And yeah, I think that that's really powerful where you're going to a website, you're not going to open up a shit ton of tabs, whatever, but it can still be a desktop version of the site because mobile versions sometimes still suck to this day or they run into varying issues. You could log in with that, or if you want to put the mobile version of Firefox or whatever, that's fine too. And, you have that there and that way you can, read a story, read a blog post, and then you close it and it's gone and it's done, and it's not like hanging there, but just a way of something like just a personal enjoyment device, if anything, or a private enjoyment device. And again, I think a tablet's perfect for that because it's not always connected for one. So you lose temptations there. There's some things you can't do like you could on a laptop. So you lose some of the temptations of that. But you then at the same time, even though there's all that, you still can do just about anything as far as like what you perhaps want to consume or even what you want to create. If you want to write on it, I love writing on my tablet. My Bluetooth keyboard is the best keyboard I have. And so I love getting to use it. I can use it with a laptop too, if I wanted. But having that and, and just kicking back and putting that on, or, I have CBS All Access on my tablet and I can kick back and watch Star Trek, or you put Plex on it and I can, kick back and watch whatever I have on Plex. There's just a lot of options, but there's no notifications. Or very few. Only ones that matter to my private life and that I actually give a shit about, and or something that, I don't want to sound like it's this big of a deal, but something that touches a little more of my core. How about that? No bullshit. And I think that is so handy to have that device. And especially like if you're a writer, it's so handy because God damn it, like you really don't want to write on a smartphone screen. Okay. But then if you're on the laptop, you're going to have other browsers, and most people don't have multiple laptops. I understand that. But getting like an older tablet or something that you can just reformat, maybe something you can even pop Lineage OS on, I think is great. And look, I've had this thing pretty much since 2013. I've had my Nexus 7 for the longest fucking time. And while Lineage OS finally got to the point where they don't support it anymore, I'm still on Android 7.1. That's okay, because I'm all right with that. It's not like my smartphone, which is with me at all times, where I want like the latest security. It's a trade-off that you make. So, but maybe you just want to go with an iPad. I don't know, but basically having that device that is meant for one thing and one thing only, that part of you, that private life of yours, and you can engage the online world with it. Whether you use it for even hell, if you happen to use social media, okay, then you're there and you use it. Like I'll have Twitter on mine and, and I go forward. But it's such an elegant and simple way of thinking. And I love the tablet because it's the best way to read magazines. It's a great way, especially comic books are such a big deal to me, to read comic books, not comic book movies. I don't give a shit about those generally. Certainly not the Marvel movies, but regardless, try it out. I think you'll be surprised. Like if you can go outside, lay back on a picnic blanket or something and, you break out your tablet. I mean, you're better off, or even better if you don't need to do any of that and you can just kick back on a picnic blanket and look at the sky, and figure out the shapes of the clouds. I mean, please, I think that's beautiful. Or go climb a tree. Fuck, enjoy life. But if you want, do that and then you can take the stuff in and, what a beautiful feeling. So anyway, just a thought. A way of separating your private life and just shoving everything that's work related, and you can leave it all behind and you can just take your tablet with you maybe, or whatever. It's handy. The things can usually take pictures too, if you want to do that sort of thing. It was such a simple but elegant little solution to really ignoring the notifications and really closing down shop when you need to, but still having a way of connecting to the internet that isn't like all pervasive. Again, I guess you could have multiple phones, but who does that? I mean, that becomes a very expensive proposition. This, I think, is really the best way to go to kind of regain your private life while still being able to access the digital life with such. So anyway, there's our little bit of opening topic. Not really a story, but there you go. We'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo! And oh boy, wait till we get to the This Week in Blockchain segment. You're in for a hell of a ride. Woo. Hey, if you have a project that needs reliable cryptocurrency data, check out blocktap.io. Blocktap.io is a universal cryptocurrency API. You can get historical prices for Bitcoin and other digital assets that you can use to build charts and do market analysis. Blockchain data is also indexed, so you can get transaction statistics, address balances, and more for Bitcoin and other networks. Blocktap.io is free for personal use, and you don't even need to create an account to access the API. To get started, try some of the example queries on the homepage at blocktap.io. Again, that's blocktap.io, blocktap.io, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
HackSec.
It is time for HackSec, where we talk issues of hacking and security. Not hacking as in like my voice is going, no, we mean hacking. And of course, usually hacking is a heroic act. I dare say always. If it's not, then you're not dealing with a hacker, you're dealing with a bad actor or whatever. But anyway, this is a story. Actually, someone tweeted at me. Of course, if you want to follow me on Twitter, at Sovryn Tech, SOVRYN Tech, and that's where you find everything, Zomi1, all of it. It's all there. Wow, some crazy shit going on today, right? Got that Picard trailer, new Terminator trailer, so much action. Oh, man. Okay, so anyway, someone tweeted at me, they said, wow, they were so thankful that they have been listening to me for years, that being Sovryn Tech, and that for their email, they are using Fastmail or Proton Mail. And let me be clear, those two are certainly at they top my list as far as online email goes. And the reason that they tweeted that and said that was because of this story from May 17th, 2019, coming from CNBC by Todd Hazelton, or Hazelton, whatever. Anyway, Google uses Gmail to track a history of things you buy, and it's hard to delete. Now, this probably won't surprise any Sovryn Tech listener. I mean, we know, and I've said this many times, any email service, you understand, not just Google, any email service that has a spam filter reads scans your email. That's how they find out whether or not it's spam. Some might be a little better and they just go for the subject line. Some don't keep a log like apparently Gmail does. Okay, but let's be clear that that's how a spam filter works. It's how it has to work. So keep that in mind. You can train your own spam filter on your own software, like in Thunderbird or something like that. That's a little more palatable, but just keep these things in perspective. Let's read on here with this story, very fresh, May 17th. So, okay, here we go. Google tracks a lot of what you buy, even if you purchased it elsewhere, like in a store or from Amazon. Last week, CEO Sundar Pichai wrote a New York Times op-ed that said, quote, privacy cannot be a luxury good, end quote. But behind the scenes, Google is still collecting a lot of personal information from the services you use, such as Gmail, and some of it can't be easily deleted. Now, this is getting fucking hilarious. We talked about a couple weeks ago, was the episode F-Hate. We talked about how Zuckerberg, the future is private, right? Is that they're great. I mean, it's a great tagline. I don't believe them for a second. Privacy cannot be a luxury good. Well, apparently, as far as I can tell, only Larry Page actually gets privacy. He goes off to some Caribbean island. Nobody knows what the fuck he's doing. And that's because he actually achieved privacy. And I guess maybe we all have to run off to islands to go do that. I don't know. But it's hilarious to fucking hear Sundar Pichai saying, oh yeah, we care about privacy. Uh-huh. And, talking about tracking purchases. I mean, we'll get into more of the story. Talking about tracking purchases, not even just Gmail. Fuck, they make you buy everything, or not make, but they offer and incentivize you to buy everything with your goddamn phone using Google Pay. What, you think they're not tracking? I mean, you don't need to do that. You can just use your credit card. Granted, your credit card company's still going to keep an eye on you, but we've raised that flag a million times. It's like, before you worry about any tech giant, there's tech giants to worry about because they're eating the world in a lot of ways. Hello, Amazon. Or they're leaving the world. But besides the point, credit card companies, they know you stem to stern. They know you better than anybody. Know you better than your doctor. Regardless, Google's getting a piece of that information now. But there's Gmail here. But let's keep going, okay? So it's important to know just how many fronts you are effectively being attacked from. Let's see, here we go. A page called, quote unquote, purchases shows an accurate list of, and there's a link here to check this out, shows an accurate list of many, though not all, of the things I've bought dating back to at least 2012. I made these purchases using online services or apps such as Amazon, DoorDash, or Seamless, or in stores such as Macy's, but never directly through Google. Google even knows, but because the digital receipts, here, I skipped a spot, but because the digital receipts went to my Gmail account, Google has a list of info about my buying habits. Google even knows about things I long forgot I'd purchased, like dress shoes I bought inside a Macy's store on September 14th, 2015. It also knows I ordered a Philly cheesesteak on a hoagie roll with Cheese Whiz and banana peppers on January 14th, 2016. Of course, they're bringing up that example because, wow, that's fucking specific. Reading on, I reloaded my Starbucks card in November 2014. I bought a new Kindle on December 18th, 2013 from Amazon. I bought, quote, a Star Wars story from iTunes on September 14th, 2018. I'm sorry. No. I love Star Wars, folks. You know that. And so on. Take a look at this sample, which covers some things I bought within the last week. And you can look, the link is in the show notes and you can check it out. It's pretty crazy. And then there's a point where you can go and see your own. I took a look at my own and motherfucker, was that a little troubling. Continuing on, quote, to help you easily view and keep track of your purchases, bookings, and subscriptions in one place, we've created a private destination that can only be seen by you. End quote, a Google spokesperson told CNBC, quote, you can delete this information at any time. We don't use information from your Gmail messages to serve you ads, and that includes the email receipts and confirmations shown on the purchase page, end quote. Here's CNBC's response, though. But there isn't an easy way to remove all of this. You can delete all the receipts in your Gmail inbox and archive messages, but if you're like me, you might save receipts in Gmail in case you need them for later for returns. There is no way to delete them from purchases without also deleting them from Gmail. When you click on the delete option in purchases, it simply guides you back to the Gmail message. So to understand here, okay, if you want to delete this information, you have to actually delete the fucking email. That's a problem, obviously. Let's read on. Google's privacy page says that only you can view your purchases, but it says, quote, information about your orders may also be saved with your activity in other Google services, end quote, and that you can see and delete this information on a separate My Activity page. Except you can't. Google's activity controls page doesn't give you any ability to manage the data it stores on purchases. Stallion breaking in for a second. Two things. One, if Google's not using what they scan in emails to feed you ads, that's a fairly new policy I'm not aware of. Two, this does not fall under, we talked a couple weeks ago about how you can auto delete certain information from Google. This information does not apply to that process where you can set it to delete every, 6 months or every 18 months, something like that. Anyway, continuing on. Google told CNBC you can turn off the tracking entirely, but you have to go to another page for search setting preferences. However, when CNBC tried this, it didn't work. There was no such option to fully turn off the tracking. It's weird this isn't front and center on Google's new privacy pages or even in Google's privacy checkup feature. Well, of course, the reason here is, Stallion breaking in, you create friction to keep people from wanting to do this sort of thing. You bury it. Okay, you make it difficult to do. But CNBC looked into this, and I only assume they did their due diligence as far as this goes, and they found, whoa, wait a minute, you're telling me this is possible? This isn't possible. You want to give me a hand? Google says it doesn't use your Gmail to show you ads, and it promises it, quote, does not sell your personal information, which includes your Gmail and Google account information, and does not share your personal information with advertisers unless you have asked us to, end quote. But for reasons that still aren't clear, it's pulling that information out of your Gmail and dumping it into a purchases page most people don't seem to know exists. Even if it's not being used for ads, there's no clear reason why Google would need to track years of purchases and make it hard to delete that information. Google says it's looking into simplifying its settings to make them easier to control, however. Anyway, that's the end of the story. So I am going to give you the solution, and I'm going to give you the why. Or at least why I think Google wants to collect this kind of information, especially purchase information. Here is a little-known factoid. Google is not the most popular search engine on the internet. Did you know that? Maybe you didn't. Anyway, can you guess what the most popular search engine is on the internet? No, it's not YouTube. That's number 3. The number 1 search engine on the internet, technically, is Amazon. Everybody is just going to Amazon to look for things. They don't go to Google to look for things. They go to the everything store, and they type it into Amazon. Now, Amazon gets to use that information, all that search information, which they put no boundaries on. There's no, can I delete my search information? They don't bother with any of that. They don't even bother to tell you any of this shit. One could argue at least Google's being upfront about it and showing you what's out there. Okay. But I don't know that that's necessarily, you could argue it's a good thing and that you're the only one that can see it and that you have some kind of control of your data. But really, well, anyway, we need to get into, why this is. But you could argue that, maybe you feel they're like the better of two evils because they actually let you see that data is where Amazon may not. Understand, and a point that we've made many times on this show, the number 1 tech giant, the tech giant that's at the top of them all is not Apple or Google, and it sure as fuck isn't Microsoft. Okay, the number 1 tech giant out there is Amazon. And as far as services, consumer base, and a lot of this other stuff and, practical uses and et cetera, it's not even a competition. And that's what I've said many times. Nobody's competing with Amazon except for maybe Walmart in this world. Nobody. And between, as far as that goes, maybe Aldi's is actually competing with Amazon at that point, but what a company. Anyway, that's because Walmart's scared the fuck of Aldi as much as they are as Amazon. Actually, they're more terrified of Aldi, but that's another story. So to understand the situation here, Google, why I think that Google is doing this and why they've been tracking your purchase history for a long time is because, like me, understand, I've been telling you that Amazon's is the big daddy, okay, in the tech world for almost as long as this show has existed. And we've been going 7 years. Okay, it's been a long, long time. Google had to have known that or put that bit of patchwork together long before I did. And so they've been tracking this history going back to 2012, which is actually when Sovryn Tech started. Going back that far, they've been tracking that purchase history. And why? that is to create some kind of customer map. In my opinion, this is what it's about. It's to create a customer map so that at some point, and believe me, they've tried with Google Express and other things, but at some point they need to take on what Amazon's doing. They need to redominate search, and they ultimately have to get into the business that Amazon's in if they want to, keep going forward as they are and keep growing 10, 15 years from now. And this is very much a back and forth that's going on. Amazon is trying to take on YouTube with Amazon Video and Twitch, right? As to where that's an area where Google is dominating. But they all have to get into each other's games because for their futures that they have in mind, Amazon, Google, whoever, for their futures that they have in mind to come into reality, okay, for Google Assistant to be just as goddamn good as they want it to be the Star Trek computer, like they have said. Ironically, both of these companies are looking towards Star Trek as far as Amazon and Google goes. They have to be everywhere. You can't have Alexas cutting in on Google Home's turf and vice versa. Okay? So they're not really, and here's the thing is that Google's been collecting this forever. It doesn't seem to have helped them at all unless they're going to come out of fucking nowhere with some kind of amazing storefront, or they're going to team up with Walmart. And I'm not saying that couldn't happen. Okay, imagine that triple threat. Google, Jet.com, and Walmart all kind of coming together to take on Amazon. You need to have a conglomerate to take on, what Amazon's doing. But that's really what I think this is about. Are they schlepping it off for advertisers? No, probably not. I think this is totally an internal thing. And that's why they're actually willing to share that information, because it's not something that goes off to advertisers and there's no real skin in the game outside of them. So they're comfortable with letting you know that they're collecting it. But the purpose is to ultimately, at some point, somehow, some way, take on what Amazon is doing. That's what it's about. Now, the solution. So there's the why. The solution is, quite frankly, what the person on Twitter very kindly, and I thank them endlessly, very kindly said. Get the fuck away from Gmail. Okay? Use Fastmail. All right? In fact, you can use, sovryn.fastmail.com or sovryn.fastmail.com. There's an ad later you'll hear for where you can get a nice little discount on it and everything. Use Fastmail. And I'm not telling you to do that because they're a sponsor or anything like that. I'm telling you to do that because it's just the right thing to do. Or you can use Proton Mail if you want to go for like some nice, slick and easy encryption. It's your call how you want to go about that. But get the fuck away from Gmail. Okay? Now, I know there's an argument, and I would make the argument too, that like your Google account is one of the most secure accounts on the planet. And it is, because they give you the option to lock the whole fucking thing down with the YubiKey. And you have to have that YubiKey. And if you lose that YubiKey, yeah, you might be able to get it back, but it's going to take a few weeks. That's the right way to do things. And Google's the only company doing that right now. Where, there's lots of companies that accept a YubiKey, but then they have like other factors that you can get into and all this other shit. That's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's got to be where, no, you need that fucking YubiKey or you're fucking screwed. That's how security gets done right today. And Google's the only one that's doing it. I'll give them the credit where it's due. Okay. And so having your Gmail, be this very important, having it be this very secure, something you want to use and continue to use because it's so locked down and so secure. I understand that. But pay attention to your tolerances here as far as privacy, is that there is a map getting built of you by these people. And again, and you could stop and say what we said before we even got into this whole conversation, that credit card companies are going to own your ass as far as purchases anyway. I understand that. But you don't need, again, we say this all the time in the show, just make it hard for them. Don't just jizz your fucking, your information and your data all over the place. Okay? Have some control of that shit. Now, I know it's not easy. I know what it's like when I transferred away from my Gmail account. Okay? It takes a lot of time. Do it now before it just gets worse, because it's just going to get worse. And one day, because it's not if, it's when, one day, there's going to be a leak. And it's going to be the fucking ugliest thing next to Facebook, it's going to be about the ugliest thing we could ever imagine. And just decentralize your data. get it elsewhere, okay? And start using different email. I mean, email's probably going to die off anyway, but get ahead of the curve and, don't have it attached to your Google account. All right, we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo! In 2014, he ran from Miami to San Francisco, raising awareness for Bitcoin and the homeless epidemic in America, and now he's doing it again. Blockchain evangelist and advocate for homeless rights Jason King is running across North America right now, from Miami to Santa Monica, right now. 5 years later, his commitment to promoting blockchain technology and fighting the homeless epidemic in America is stronger than ever. And you can help Jason now by going to blockchainacrossamerica.com. While you're there, donate to Satoshi Forest Sanctuary Incorporated to help the homeless, along with all kinds of other ways you can help. Get involved today. blockchainacrossamerica.com. That's blockchainacrossamerica.com. Hey baby, I know, you are tired of Gmail. You have had enough. Well, I have a solution for you. What I want you to do is you go to Fastmail, okay? It's fastmail.sovryntech.com. That's the URL you can use. You're going to get a discount with that. You are going to love this. This is email for email's sake. This company does nothing more. Just email, and they do it right. All the latest security technologies. You want to log into your account with your YubiKey? You can do that. Fastmail has your hookup. Very inexpensive plans. I want you to check it out. You go to fastmail.sovryntech.com. That'll get you the hookup, and it's an honor to have them as a part of Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
This week in blockchain.
Before we get into our blockchain story this week, and I'm going to try and keep cool, because I don't know if my voice can get those highs, because I'm not excited. Don't think it's because of excitement. It's quite the opposite. It's amazement. Not in a good way. It's all kinds of terms I could think of. But before I get into that, you want to talk about any of this stuff? Let me tell you, something you should do. Call in. Like, if you want to talk about your experience of getting away from Gmail and how it changed your life, believe me, it can. Okay. You can lock down, you can lock down your Fastmail account with a YubiKey as well. You really can. The second factor anyway, not as the solo factor. But anyway, if you want to, talk about this kind of stuff, I want you to go to Sovryn Tech sponsor, Free Talk Live. freetalklive.com, runs 7 nights a week, 3 hours a night, number 27 talk show in the United States, the only libertarian radio show out there. Baby, if you want to talk about anything, it's an open phone show. You call right in, and if you're really good, they'll hold you. They'll keep you going for some segments. Believe me, it's tremendous time, and you can talk about anything you want to talk about, and you're going to reach a massive, massive audience with them. So freetalklive.com. I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech, and we're independent voices out there, and they are one of them. Sovryn Tech's one of them. All Azomia one's one of them. It's such an honor. Anyway, I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Now, let's get into our blockchain story of the week, because motherfucker, have we got a doozy. It was a couple days ago. In fact, you can go on my Twitter account if you want. You can check it out. It's a couple days ago, where just before Bitcoin Pizza Day, right? The day that, that a couple of pizzas were bought for however many thousands of Bitcoin. I guess this would have been the 21st. I noticed, on Twitter, they have on the left-hand side things that are trending and all that, or in the app, they have stuff that's important to you. Like they could even begin to guess what's important to me. But regardless, it said Craig Wright. Now, whenever I see that name, different words come to mind. Usually it starts with, when I see Craig Wright, somehow my brain just like auto filters, kind of like a Chrome extension. It just auto filters to slap nuts, or Craig wrong, or what the fuck. Any of those things come up before it really registers that, wait a minute, I'm looking at the name Craig Wright. I feel bad if there's anyone else out there named Craig Wright, because I'm never going to see your name or be able to even really say that name at first blush. Like if I ever shake your hand, I'm just going to say, hey, slap nuts. And when really your name is just Craig. I'm sorry. Because this guy, oh man. So the claim going around, and you can't know the reality. I say, we talk about this often. Online, especially on Twitter, you really can't know the reality of, like, if you see a bunch of people getting very excited about certain things, you don't know that that's not just one person or a company in control of 1,000, 2,000, 200,000 accounts, all just spewing the same bullshit. But it makes it look like there's some kind of groundswell or some kind of grassroots business going on, when in reality, it's one or two people, maybe controlling a bunch of, it's what they call there's a few different ways that this gets used, but it's called a Bangladeshi special. Okay. Where you can like hire people to do massive retweets or comments or whatever, or you can hire a bunch of people to follow you. It's really insane. And certainly, I wouldn't put it past people in the Bitcoin space, or, well, should I say in the blockchain space, or really the libertarian or anarchist space to ever do that. In fact, I know they do that, a lot of them. But regardless of any of that, so I noticed a lot of people talking about Craig Wright, and I'm like, well, what the hell is going on? And apparently he filed a copyright. Now there's some very, very specific legal mumbo jumbo, okay, involved here. But the point doesn't change of what I'm about to say. So don't fucking email me saying, well, registered means this and means this and means this. None of that matters. And it doesn't. Well, government doesn't fucking matter. The Copyright Office doesn't fucking matter. Okay. But regardless, the Craig Wright applied for copyright over the Bitcoin, version, whatever, 0.01 white paper. Okay. The original white paper that everybody's been studying and reading for about a decade now. For a decade now. And he was granted that application. He was granted, that he was considered the, basically the author, or that not that he's considered the author, that he's granted copyright over the Bitcoin white paper. Now, does that mean that he's Satoshi Nakamoto? A lot of fucking morons on Twitter, at least, and I'm sure elsewhere, and I'm sure some people in real life actually think that that's so. And they were, happy day. Let me read the story from CoinDesk here to give you a little more perspective. This is by John Biggs. Actually, no, John Biggs. Good guy. From May 22nd, 2019. Here we go. The title of the story is U.S. Copyright Office says it does not, quote unquote, recognize Craig Wright as Satoshi. Even as Bitcoin SV enjoyed a Craig Wright Satoshi bump / Satoshi bump Tuesday, the U.S. Copyright Office was hard at work dispelling the notions that it officially recognized anyone as the inventor of Bitcoin. Now I want to break in for a second. If you don't know what Bitcoin SV is a further fork of Bitcoin Cash. Basically, it's another fork of Bitcoin. And SV stands for Satoshi's Vision. Now, I will say, no, actually it stands for Slapnut's Vision. Because, again, it's Satoshi's Vision. Why? Because Craig Wright's spearheading it, and Craig Wright is claiming to be Satoshi. He has been for some time. I have said over and over again on the show over the years, absolutely no fucking way is he. He is not. And an easy way for him to prove it is if he just move some fucking coin from the Bitcoin address that we quote unquote all know is quote unquote Satoshi's. Okay. So anyway, this copyright claim, Craig Wright is coming out, and a lot of his followers, and I mean that in the religious cultish sense, I'll say that, are coming out and saying, aha, this is the U.S. government recognizing that Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto. I'm going to keep reading the story here a bit. Quote, as a general rule, when the Copyright Office receives an application for registration, the claimant certifies as to the truth of the statements made in the submitted materials. The Copyright Office does not investigate the truth of any statement made. Let's read that again. The Copyright Office does not investigate the truth of any statement made. end quote. The Copyright Office wrote in a press release, quote, in a case in which a work is registered under a pseudonym, the Copyright Office does not investigate whether there is a provable connection between the claimant and the pseudonymous author, end quote. As multiple sources have already noted, all it takes to register a copyright is $55 and a stable internet connection. In short, any claim that the U.S. government has registered Wright as the author of Bitcoin are spurious at best. Why did the government go to the trouble of clarifying this point? Wright's actions required it. On Tuesday, that's the 21st, a press representative sent a widely read release that suggested, in short, that the government accepted Wright was Satoshi. From the release, quote, importantly, the registrations issued by the U.S. Copyright Office recognize Wright as the author under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto of both the white paper and code. This is the first government agency recognition of Craig Wright as Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, end quote. The U.S. Copyright Office, on the other hand, doesn't actually recognize anyone for anything. Ultimately, it is a repository designed for protecting the creators of art and literature. But it is not an immutable source of truth. Like, okay, let's not go there. That's a funny line. But anyway, so, and of course, I would argue copyright does a horrible job of protecting anything, and IP, intellectual property, and its laws are as nonsensical as any concept of authoritarianism that humanity has ever come up with. Again, I'm completely self-avowed anarchist. I have no problem saying that intellectual property is utter and pure bullshit. It has no ethical, even if I believed in morality, it would have no moral basis. It is a horrible, horrible concept that needs to go the way of the dodo. I have a hard time imagining. Now, let's start breaking this down. So I'm against IP. There you go. How about that? I have a very hard time imagining that the guy that wrote the Bitcoin white paper, Satoshi Nakamoto, and I say guy loosely, really, I mean, it could be gal, it could be a Z, could be a conglomerate of people. I'm open to any of those options. In fact, at first blush, I don't think it was a guy, but that's besides the point. I don't think the person that wrote that paper, based on much of what it says, gives two fucking shits about whether or not the U.S. government recognizes them. And I don't think they'd spend two of their own, at the time, what people would call made-up magic internet money to prove the point, or to even suggest, or to even ask, please, U.S. government, give me permission to claim that I am the creator of Bitcoin. Otherwise, he would have fucking registered all the shit with the U.S., like, was Bitcoin put through the patent office? There's a million. This doesn't make any goddamn sense. The person that wrote that white paper, this does not follow through with the philosophy that I read in that white paper. And you could say that that's interpretation. Fine. I am open to that. But then if that's just interpretation, let's put this bit of matter into perspective. Who the hell cares who Satoshi Nakamoto is? And who the hell cares what he has to say? I said this years ago, back when there was a battle with, Bitcoin XT and Bitcoin Core at the time? Years ago. I said, Satoshi's not the Delphic goddamned oracle. Satoshi's vision, who cares? It's not his vision to matter. It's for how the market decides to take advantage of such a thing. There was a point in time where I dare say it was necessary that Bitcoin helped fund WikiLeaks at a very important time and when that organization had meaning. Okay. And, Satoshi didn't want that to happen. Am I like, oh shit, fuck, we should have never supported WikiLeaks with Bitcoin. Blah, blah. No, fucking support it. I don't care what Satoshi says about it. That organization needed to exist right then. Needed to get funded. And PayPal was, being PayPal. Speaking of that, let's look at some of what Craig Wright has to say. What Craig Wright feels Bitcoin should be. This Satoshi's vision. I'm going to read this. I screenshotted this. It's right on my Twitter feed if you want to find it for yourself. Quote. This is from Slapnuts or Craig Wrong. Sorry. From Craig Wright. Quote. BTC, as in Bitcoin Core, which is the real Bitcoin, but whatever. Let's hear what he says. BTC is not Bitcoin. Bitcoin is set in stone and does not change. Where there is a protocol change, there is developer control, which is the exact opposite of what Bitcoin is about. BTC is, all right, first off, I mean, just on that, this shows the complete lack of understanding of this guy. No, that's that. Where there's developer control, that's the opposite of Bitcoin. It's not developer control, it's market control. The market decides how the shit ends up getting used. Okay, that's how money works. Regardless, and the market decides whether or not it has value, not your fucking white paper. Reading on, BTC is passing off as Bitcoin. It is an airdrop copy that has been designed to slowly alter the protocol, allowing the system to be anonymized. Oh no! It's allowing the system to be anonymized? Oh, isn't that terrible? Of course, Stallion, I'm being facetious. I think anonymizing money is a beautiful and wonderful and necessary. It is a necessary thing. If you don't want to anonymize money, just use PayPal. You don't need Bitcoin then. Reading on. Anonymized to such an extent that criminal activity can happen. The goal is to create a system that allows people to commit crimes, extort money, have automated ransomware, and worse. This is not the goal of Bitcoin. Wait. That's not the goal of Bitcoin? Well, what the hell do I need? I'm completely baffled here. So let me read this last bit again. All right, here it is. It's talking about Bitcoin Core. It's an airdrop copy that has been designed to slowly alter the protocol, allowing the system to be anonymized to such an extent that criminal activity can happen. All right, first and foremost, who the hell gets to decide what's criminal activity? I mean, personally, the reason I know most people that started off getting into Bitcoin almost a decade ago was to explicitly do what is widely considered, I'm not saying it is, but I am saying it is considered, it is deemed from on high by the US government or whatever other government as criminal activity. But it's not criminal activity, right? No victim, no crime. To do that sort of stuff, that's why they got into Bitcoin. I thought Bitcoin was created so that you could hold on to stuff that exists outside of the government. That money outside of the government in and of itself, I dare say, would probably be considered a criminal activity. I mean, understand. You have to understand this. And I know that people today who read about Bitcoin on CNBC or wherever the fuck they happen to read about Bitcoin probably have no clue about this history. Okay? Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies in general, really got their start in the very state I'm sitting in right now, in New Hampshire. Now, I mean, yes, were they created elsewhere, blah, 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 sure. Okay, but as far as like where people started getting excited about them, look, I'll be honest, and I'm a teetotaler, okay? I am a straight edge guy. I have no problem with what people want to put into their bodies. I don't care. That's not my business. You rock and roll. You have a great time, okay? But I will tell you that... I mean, really, the bulk of the reason that that a lot of people that were initially excited about Bitcoin, that started, going to the restaurant and asking the waiter or waitress, "Hey, do you accept Bitcoin?" And started their first little businesses and the first ways that you could actually buy anything with Bitcoin. Hell, even the head of Overstock.com came to PorkFest, okay, to talk about. I mean, he was invited there. Of course, he's kind of a libertarian guy, but he came there, recognizing in a very real way that this is, a hotbed of Bitcoin activity. In fact, Overstock.com, when they first started accepting Bitcoin, it was the first major, as far as I understand it, I mean, maybe there's different metrics on this, is one of the first companies to ever really accept Bitcoin. I mean, just a massive percentage, the largest percentage of purchases in Bitcoin on Overstock.com was coming from New Hampshire. Now, I'm not insulting anybody when I say this, okay, because some of them are acquaintances, friends, whatever. But I guarantee you that the reason people got into Bitcoin was to fucking buy drugs. It was absolutely to engage in, the people got passionate about this stuff, was to engage in criminal, what is considered criminal activity. Now, is it really criminal activity? Well, again, who gets to decide what criminal activity is? I sure as fuck hope it's not Slapnuts, or I'm sorry, Craig Wright. I sure hope it's not him that gets to decide what's criminal activity. Nobody should be, that's a whole other big conversation, but you get my point. Bitcoin, money, no one's supposed to define what money can, what exactly it can do and what it can be used for. You're just supposed to be able to earn it and then do what you do with it, whatever that looks like. And I would argue that requires anonymization. Now, and to make all this worse, I know some people who also have gone to things like PorcFest, Liberty Forum, a lot of these other events, come to New Hampshire, have, at the very least to me, they've called themselves anarchists or something along those lines, ANCAP, I don't know, or they've called themselves libertarians, whatever. Now, most people, even a lot of people with the capital L libertarianism, maybe not so much, but even people with the capital L libertarianism, generally are very finicky about IP, about intellectual property. They're like, no, that's some wishy-washy stuff. I don't think you can really claim that. And to see people, now, I mean, libertarians one thing, but actual people who and I know who they are, and they are supporting Bitcoin SV. If I really have to name the names, I will. Okay? I know these people. I've had dinner with these people. I've talked with these people. There might have even been a point where I would call some of them friends. And on Twitter, I watched them celebrate because they're all hot on Bitcoin SV. And they think that Craig Wright is Satoshi. Somehow they're okay with him deciding what's criminal activity, and somehow they're okay with him, making Bitcoin to where I guess you can be held accountable to what you do with that money. It's one thing to be accountable to make sure that, that's the point of a distributed ledger, is to make sure that the money's going where it's supposed to go and so on, and to prove it. It's a whole other thing to say what people should be doing with it. That's a whole other ballgame. Now, I would think libertarians and anarchists would not be okay with that, but apparently a lot of them that support Bitcoin SV are, because it's right out of Craig Wright's own words, who's the head of this whole thing. But to watch them on Twitter celebrate the fact that the U.S. government was supposedly, keyword, supposedly recognizing that Craig Wright was Satoshi Nakamoto. For people to celebrate that, for libertarians / anarchists / whatever the fuck you want to call yourselves that I know is supposed to be against IP, for you to come out there and say that, oh man, isn't this exciting? See, this is proof that Craig Wright is Satoshi. For you to celebrate copyright law, for you to celebrate recognition by the U.S. government is unbelievable and pathetic. You are showing your true colors. That it's never been, oh man. Oh, I just want to go on a completely different tirade, but this is about Bitcoin. I'm going to wrap this up, okay? Because I don't want it to go into too much of overtime. I cannot believe that I saw people who, I thought were really principled individuals celebrating IP law. I can't believe that. I can't believe that they're falling for this, Craig Wright nonsense, but whatever. I'm in awe of this, okay? I cannot believe, and I don't really care, okay, because Bitcoin is bigger than Satoshi Nakamoto. But I cannot believe that the person that wrote that white paper would be interested in any way in getting in copyright and in getting recognition from the U.S. government. I don't believe it. And in fact, I mean, look at, what was his name? The guy who kind of, quote unquote, took over for Satoshi, right? Gavin Andresen. He said he wanted to take Bitcoin away from its black flag waving anarchist roots. What black flag waving anarchists? That's basically what he was claiming is what Bitcoin was originally all about. That's coming right from Gavin Andresen. What black flag waving anarchist person or group or technology, if you want to go there, would possibly be interested in getting copyright recognition? And even then, we know, and the Copyright Office came out because the reaction was so nuts online. The Copyright Office came out and said, fuck no. No, we're not saying that this guy is this. We're just giving him copyright over this paper. We don't know who the fuck he is. Unbelievable. Yeah, I just don't believe it. I don't believe that person would go that toe. And even if it were so, and that's a huge if, then that is not the same person that invented Bitcoin 10 years ago. That person has changed to such a degree that it might as well not be the same person, and I'm glad they're not walking around by the name Satoshi Nakamoto anymore. So anyway, Bitcoin SV, bullshit. I don't know. Well, no, I do know, but I was going to say maybe it should stand for BSV, should stand for bullshit vision. I don't know. But I still like Bitcoin slapnuts vision. Don't get into this. Don't fall for this. Don't buy into it. Okay? I'm not saying, oh, well, what, do you hate altcoins? No. And I don't care if Bitcoin SV exists. I really don't. It doesn't matter to me. Like, let it exist. But I'm not going to just sit there and listen to some asshat claim that he's Satoshi Nakamoto or somehow. And I'm also not going to stand by and watch people who, it gets a little personal for me. You want to know why? Because a lot of those same people, some were friends, some were quite the opposite. A lot of those same people would give me crap about my ethics over the years. And yet here they are. Well, anyway, it's revealing. Their true colors are showing. They got excited about IP law. Shows how much of fucking anarchists they are. Anyway, Bitcoin is Bitcoin. Bitcoin rolls on regardless of all of this drama. It does not matter. Great. Bitcoin SV went up a couple 100% in price for a day and then dropped right back down because reality struck. Fine. Bitcoin continues doing what it does. And that's why I always love Bitcoin. Let that baby roll. Anyway, that's it for this week's Sovryn Tech. Of course, if you want to join the Zomi One Underground and get more content like this, or be able to get access to the Wednesday Q&As and ask me questions, I'm sure there's going to be a million around this one. You go for it. You go to Zomia1.com and you get your hookup. All right? And we'll wrap it up for this week. I will see all of you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.
Can you get enough of the Man of Tomorrow? I didn't think so. Well, now you're going to get even more, along with some of the hottest hosts and podcasts around, because now Sovryn Tech has become an entire network. Zomia One, the most rebellious podcast network in the galaxy, with bleeding edge shows covering science, technology, and even pop culture. Podcasts like Sovryn Trek, bringing you the latest and greatest in everything Star Trek. TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast, where the Man of Tomorrow and Robin Freebeard talk Star Wars like no other show out there. The Hard and Fast podcast, where metal is king and the latest album reviews and interviews with the greatest acts in hard rock and heavy metal happen. And you can even become a member of the Zomia One Underground and get access to thousands of hours of exclusive content and shows. And this isn't Patreon, baby. Oh no, this is all happening on the premier podcast platform, Podbean. So head over to Zomia1.com, that's ZOMIAONE.com, and become a part of the future with Zomia One, and become a member of the Zomia One Underground. And while you're at it, download the Podbean app on iOS and Android. Be the future. Zomia1.com.